Hello and welcome to the third of my little coaching sessions where every month I take some of the content from my book, Get More Listings, and I just dive a little deeper into some of the content. And it's the first Thursday of the month. It's just after 10 o'clock. So that's when I always do this. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm just going to get straight into it. So uh, this is it's going to cover a really fundamental mistake that I see many estate agents making, and I'm in a fortunate position. I work with estate agents and letting agents throughout the UK, both working with them one-to-one to help them grow their business, but also helping them to write their property listings, other copywriting tasks, that sort of thing. And what I have seen and understood is that a lot of the challenges that the estate agents face are pretty universal. It doesn't matter whether you're an independent estate agent or an established estate agent, whether you're new, whether you've been going for many years, the challenges and the problems are pretty much universal. And that insight led me to develop Get More Listings. And I see three uh, three problems that pretty much most estate agents face. They face either one or several of these, and it's worth just very quickly running through them because when you understand that, that will help to understand the solutions that I'm proposing. So the first challenge that I see agents facing is an unpredictable lead pipeline. So it is, as the slide suggests there, feast and famine. You get lots of instructions. 1 month, that means you're really busy. That means you don't have time to spend on marketing. You don't feel the negative impact of that probably for 2 or 3 months down the line, but then everything comes home to roost, and in 2 or 3 or 4 months' time, the phone isn't ringing, it's tumbleweeds and crickets. Um, but despite that, and this might sound slightly counterintuitive. The other problem that agents face is what I call the hamster wheel of diminishing returns, which is a nice little phrase, which is specifically relating to marketing activities and specifically relating to what I think is the 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 relentlessness, which is a hard thing to say, of social media and online marketing, and agents feeling the need to constantly do more and more and more. But at the end of the day, they're doing more and more and more, and actually, in terms of results, they're getting less and less and less. Um, whether you've got a high street agent with a whole load of staff, or you're doing it on your own, perhaps with family members to help out, it doesn't really matter. I see agents constantly struggling with not having the time to do everything they need. Um, so we've got the unpredictable lead pipeline. We've got the constant feeling of needing to do more, and that hamster wheel. And the third problem, which has got so many it impacts on so many different things, is this is a wonderful quote that I always roll out from Seth Godin, is price competition. And I firmly believe this quote here that if your customers just care about price, that's your fault. You need to own that because essentially you haven't given them anything else to care about. But I hear time and time again agents getting frustrated that they're losing out instructions to uh, agents who aren't very good. And we all know that agent in our town. Agents who aren't very good, but they're cheap, so they win the instructions. They might not actually sell the house, but hey ho, boards get boards. It just sort of self-generates. So understanding those three problems led me to write Get More Listings and the book that preceded it, which was called 5 Mile Famous. But the overall premise and promise of Get More Listings, as it says in the subtitle, is it will allow you to get 10 more listings with less marketing, which again, how on earth can you do that? Surely if you want more listings, you need to do more marketing. That isn't the case. Now, I'll go into this more at the end, but just in case people sort of get distracted or have to rush off, I've developed a very neat little calculator, which if you scan the QR code, you will be able to see, based on the stuff that you're doing, how many more listings potentially you could get every month, and just equally as important, how much time you could actually save every month. This is a calculator, a tool that I've developed. It's not one of these automated things where you immediately get a whole load of graphs and stuff that blows your mind and you don't really understand what it is. You get a very simple one-page report back that I actually have to sit down and get my calculator out and work out manually. It's not an automated thing. It can take 24 hours for me to get around to doing it, but it is quite useful and insightful, and it actually it means you can understand the impact that it has on your business. Now, moving on from that, what I'm going to talk about today, and you'll notice as you go through the slides, if you've seen any of my other videos of these sort of trainings, I don't do bullet points. So it means you've got to pay attention. So what I'm going to talk about today is quite a small section of the book, actually, but it's what I call marketing mistake number 2. And it is trying to attract people who will never instruct you. And this is a real problem. And it's a real problem that impacts on all 3 of those challenges that agents face. Obviously, if you're running around spending time, spending money on people who are never going to instruct you, that's really it's going to impact on your time, the hamster wheel sort of thing, but also it can lead to the unpredictability too. So it all fundamentally comes down to something which I think is faced by a lot of estate agents. They follow this sort of marketing advice, which seems to be very, very well established, that in order to, this is called a pipeline or a funnel. And if you've ever read any marketing textbooks or watched a marketing expert on YouTube, you'll have seen something like this. And it says, in order to get a sale, and in the world of estate agents and letting agents, we're talking about getting an instruction. But also this could apply to attracting buyers as well, I suppose. But we're specifically thinking about getting instructions here, getting listings. So in order to get that instruction, to get that listing, you need to first attract a whole lot of people, then you need to nurture them, and then at some point you convert them into being a seller or a landlord. And that advice is rolled out and has been for many, many, many years. And the problem that I have with this is it's generic advice. It's meant to work for estate agents, letting agents, butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, dentists, software providers, any type, people who make widgets and washers and mechanical engineering firms. This is meant to work for pretty much every single business on the planet, and it does to a greater or limited extent. And my problem is it doesn't really work, in my opinion, for estate agents or letting agents. And the next couple of slides, I just want to establish why I say that. Firstly, if you have a look at the book, if we're talking about getting 10 more listings a month, I say you can do it by doing less marketing. But let's just assume we want to get 10 more listings a month by following this established funnel that everybody believes works. Well, okay, this is the sort of funnel or numbers that the gurus would have you striving for. So in order to get 10 customers, so 10 instructions at the bottom, you've got to get 1,000 leads in at the top. If you get 1,000 leads in at the top, then I mean the percentages, you can play with the percentages, but if you get 1,000 leads in at the top, 10% might turn into prospects, so that's where you get the 100 number, and then 10% of them might actually instruct you. And the reason that that I wrote this section was I saw a very well respected industry trainer on a video on one of the social media channels, and he was saying, and I'm not going to name names, but he was saying, um, essentially, as an estate agent, he said, if you can get 100 leads, um, and one of those leads might end up instructing you, then your job in terms of your marketing is essentially just to go out and get more 100 leads, because when this all shakes out, one of those will instruct you. And that blew my mind, and not in a good way, because essentially what he was saying was, your job as an estate agent is to spend your valuable time and your valuable marketing budget on 99 people who aren't going to instruct you, in the hope that one out of 100 will. Here's a nice visual representation of what that looks like. And if you think of it like this, and please listen to me, don't try and find where Wally is, but surely that just strikes you as well as it strikes me as being madness, especially when you've got limited time and you've got limited budget. It's fine if you've got Coca-Cola style budgets to do big dumb stupid market awareness campaigns and all the rest of it, but you're talking about spending hundreds or potentially a couple of £1,000 at most on marketing every month, and throwing that away because 99 out of 100 people aren't going to be right. That's just bonkers as far as I'm concerned. And it's even more bonkers when most estate agents have this approach when it comes to their marketing. And this approach is throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. So it's very, very harmful. It's harmful in terms of wasting your time, in terms of wasting your money. But just bear with me for a second. So if we go back to the funnel idea of you've got to attract people and then you've got to nurture them and then you convert them. The way that all of the gurus and all of the marketing experts will have you attract people to your business is using something that's free. And what they say is you need a lead magnet which will attract those people to you, and then they'll shake out, as some of them might actually be a potential client for you. That can work, and I have seen it work. I think people's attention spans are getting shorter. I think people's expectations are getting higher. The days of going onto Canva and coming up with a free PDF, because this again, the guru that I was talking about said, you offer a free PDF, people will download it. That GDPR and all of that gives you the right to then follow up with them, and having done that, hopefully they get some value out of the PDF. But if they don't, at least you've got their email address. Ha ha ha! You can nurture them, and then ultimately, one of those 100 people might become a client. And you can get all of these Canva templates and all the rest of it to create a PDF, which quite frankly I think are being devalued, and they're being devalued one shitty PDF at a time, especially with AI and things like that. As it becomes easier to produce rubbish, more rubbish is produced, therefore it makes it harder and harder to actually stand out. I mean, I didn't realize until quite recently, you can go on Etsy. These are from Etsy, and they are very American. But you can go on Etsy and you can buy for not, less than $100, a real estate lead magnet, local restaurant guide, or your community guide. Now, I don't have time or the inclination today to pick holes in the premise of this, in the sense of, well, okay, um, if you've been living in a town for the whole of your life, um, and you're thinking of selling your house because kids have moved out and you're rattling around a big old house and you want to release some equity and go off and enjoy yourself. So if that's the sort of downsizer equity releaser buyer, what the hell do they want? With a guide to their town, they know more about the town than you bloody do. So equally local restaurant guide, really. Um, I think as estate agents, we were in a incredibly powerful position because we literally hold the keys to um, a British obsession. British people are obsessed by property. They turn, people like Martin Roberts into celebrities, which is mind blowing, because of property porn on TV. Now, I think the power of these lead magnets is becoming diminished. Um, that's why, well, case in point, I haven't got a free PDF. If I'm going to try and attract someone to give me their email address, I've got my calculator, which is more involved and actually it's more insightful. It does give you something specific to your business. You might not agree with it, that's fine. But it's not just something that's knocked out and given out, automatically from some email. Um, so I think people are wanting more. So I've got a problem with the whole attract stage and how difficult. Again, we've got attract, we've got nurture, we've got convert. Just think how difficult it would be, how many social media posts you would need to put out, how much money you would need to spend on Facebook advertising to get 1,000 leads this month. And don't forget, at the end of the month, everything resets and you've got to go and get another 1,000 leads. And I would strongly suggest those sort of numbers don't work for estate agents and letting agents. And I think as time goes on, this is just the very beginning of July 2025. As time goes on, those numbers are going to work less and less and less because of lead magnets as a thing, free PDFs, free events calendar about your local area, all those sort of things becoming less and less powerful. But that's not the only problem. The other problem that I have, if you go back to the previous triangle, is the nurtury side of things, which is essentially what turns those 1,000 leads into 100 prospects into 10 potential clients. And that's typically done by email. And again, this ties into the problems that I was talking about. If you are, let's use the example because it's the example that the guru I'm talking about used. He said, give something like a local events guide or something like that, free PDF. Okay, well, for a start, that says nothing about your expertise as an estate agent. If what's coming up in August in your town, that says nothing about you as an estate agent. It says nothing about you as a letting agent. Your butcher, your baker, your candlestick maker, your local taxi driver could equally put out a local events calendar PDF. So, okay, well, you've got their email address. Well done. So that means there's a lot of work to be done to actually talk to them about you as an estate agent. And this is where the whole nurture thing comes in. And it's hard getting 1,000 leads, but it's also bloody hard nurturing people by email. And this is a very old image, um, which I found online, representing death by 1,000 cuts. And I think this whole nurture phase uh, is very much like death by 1,000 emails. Essentially, what people say is, and I'm coming at this from a point of, um, I used to send a daily email every single day. I did it for over 3 years. Um, some people say you should send a daily email. Most people say if you don't send at least one a week, then it's pretty pointless. I tend to agree. If you're going to be doing email, you need to be sending at least one a week. I think daily is overkill. I say that having done it for 3 years. Um, but it's hard getting 1,000 leads in at the top of that funnel. It's bloody hard coming up with email content, which actually does something, makes a difference, creates an emotional reaction. Um, and again, AI isn't the baddie here, but as more and more content is churned out, it does become harder and harder to stand out in the inbox. And all this leads back to the hamster wheel. Um, so and I am conscious of time, and this is a relatively punchy and pithy section, or at least it's meant to be. Um, so this isn't just me ranting. You may or may not, probably not recognize this guy, but if he says something, I listen because in the property world, he's done quite well for himself. He's a guy called Brian Chesky, and you might have heard the company that he founded. It's Airbnb. Now that's worth about $25 billion, and he's one of the two founders, so it doesn't take a genius to work out his worth. But what he said, and I thoroughly agree with him, is it's far better to have 100 people who love you than 1 million people who sort of like you. And I think everything that I've just talked about in terms of that, the previous attract, nurture, convert logic is all about attracting the biggest number of people who sort of like you at best. Well, they know me and I've got their email address. And I think the problem comes is that it's easy to do in a way, because when I speak to clients, one of the things that they find most difficult uh, is differentiating themselves in a way that will cause people to fall in love with them. And I hear it time and time again from clients that it goes back to the whole problem of pricing. You know, why should I pay you, 1.5%, 1.7%, 2%? You're just another estate agent, and the guy down the road will do it for 0.5%. And the whole just another estate agent thing is a big, big, big problem, because estate agents usually don't know how to differentiate themselves, to differentiate their offering in a way that will allow them to command a premium fee. So, what do you do about it? Well, rather than the attract, nurture, convert funnel, this is what I talk about in the book. There is a triangle, which is a little bit like an upside down funnel. But going around the edge, we still have attract, but rather than nurture, we have resonate. And rather than convert, we have connect. And I'm not going to go into the stuff in the middle, because that's so. Without turning this into a marketing theory lesson, the stuff around the edge of the triangle is the strategy, and the stuff in the circle in the middle is the tactics. and just useful for you to know. Strategies, the long-term stuff, the tactics, other things that deliver on the strategy. So I'm not really going to concentrate on the circle too much. At the minute, I'm just going to talk about, yes, clearly you need to attract people, but what I'm saying is there are better ways to attract people. And rather than nurture, you need to resonate, and then rather than convert, you need to connect. How do you go about this? Well, what can you do following this uh, Zoom call or watching this video? What can you do to actually make a difference in your own business? And the first thing, and it's a slight tangent, but it's really important. The first thing is a mindset shift. The first thing you need to do, if you are going to get 10 more listings a month by doing less marketing, the first thing you need to say to yourself is, I'm opting out of what I call the free valuation beauty parade. That is where you know that when a potential seller invites you round to their house, they're also probably going to be inviting another one or two competitors. You get there at 1 o'clock, the competitor gets there at 2 o'clock, the other guy gets there at 3 o'clock. I've got other videos on this, but where I go into real detail about this. But let's just say I firmly believe that is a terrible way for estate agents, letting agents to go about winning new business, and it is an equally terrible way for sellers and landlords to find the best agent. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you mentally change your approach to say, what I'm going to do is over time, and it doesn't have to take years, but over time, I want to get to the situation where more often than not, a seller will want to invite me to their home and only me, rather than the free valuation beauty parade where all the estate agents are the same. So I might as well pick three and see what they say. And then I choose the one who gives me the highest valuation, who cares whether it's realistic, and who gives me the lowest fee. So what you want to do is over time, you want to be getting more and more calls where the seller says, I've been following you for some time. I really like your approach. I really like, the way that you go about things. Can you come out and value my property? And when you say, oh, right, who else have you got coming out? Because I would always ask that question. I always used to. Then they go, oh, no one. Why would I? And it's one of the questions that I ask on that calculator is, how many appointments do you get every month where other agents are invited? How many appointments do you get every month where you're the only one at the table? Because shifting that isn't easy. Well, it's it's simple, but it's not easy. But it can work over time. How do you do that? Well, the first thing is through focus. And if you saw the previous video, then really there are lots of parallels with the previous video. But you need to focus. You need to focus in a couple of ways. One of the first things when I take on a new one-to-one client, one of the first things that we explore is, who would their ideal seller, or if they're in lettings, their ideal landlord be? Because when you understand that, it means you can be much more interesting, insightful, inspirational when it comes to the stuff you're talking about, the approach you take, the way you actually provide your services. I was talking to a client a couple of months ago, and I got them to do an exercise where I said, okay, just imagine for a second all of your potential sellers were first time sellers. How would you go about offering, communicating with them, offering the services, everything that you do a timeline in terms of how they like to be approached, how you communicate with them, the way that you respond, and then do exactly the same exercise if you were talking to uh, downsizers in their late 60s. And I said to them, if you come out with the same process, you've done it wrong. Um, so we're not just talking about marketing communications, we're actually talking about the fundamentals of your offering and your service. And the idea is very simple. If you're dealing with people who own apartments, whether they live in them or whether they might be investors, then you need to be talking about very different things because they will have very different motivations to potentially people who might be first-time sellers, selling their first home as they perhaps want to start a family, or they might have just had a little baby or something like that. What's going to be of interest to them is going to be very different to someone who's in an apartment, and very different to someone who, like the example there, is in a suburban bungalow. So you have to be focused. Terrifies most people. Sorry about that. It's just absolutely fundamental. What you then need to do, and it's two sides of the same coin. What you then need to do is understand the motivations of your ideal seller or landlord, using the example here. And I don't like if you hear marketing people talking about USPs. I know, because I'm a marketing geek, that was a term invented by a guy called Rosser Reeves, who was pretty much a Mad Men era head of a very successful advertising agency. The USP was great in the 1950s, less so now. So I always like to talk about what's your secret special sauce, because I'm sophisticated like that. So it's two sides of the same coin, because again, um, if you are aiming to appeal to an older demographic, then being all over TikTok is, potentially not not a strength as far as they see it. Um, could be, but anyway. Um, so you need to focus on seller or landlords, and what you offer or what you could offer, because you don't have to have the solution fixed. You could go, right, okay, we're going to focus on this particular part of the market, and we need to tweak our offering a bit so that it's really tailored to them. Great, good work. Having identified that, the next thing in terms of focus is in terms of a tight geographical area, because I see it time and time again. Agents try to blanket cover their whole town, and that's never going to work. What you need to do is you need to identify where your ideal sellers are, and then really focus on a tight. I call it the smallest area. I call a 5 streets area. Don't get hung up on the 5 streets. They could be 7, 10, whatever, but it's a tightly defined area. Then once you've got that, and I've got other videos talking about it, you expand to a 1 mile area. And really, that should be your focus. You shouldn't be looking too far beyond that, whether you're in a large city, suburb, or in a village, or what have you. There is enough business to be had. And if there's not, then you stick to the same ideal seller and the offering that you provide for them, and you just look and see, find another area. So hopefully that gives you an insight into, firstly, why I believe that whole attract, nurture, convert thing Might work in some industries, and I do work a bit of consulting work in other industries, and I think that attract, nurture, convert thing can work a bit better. Um, can work a bit better perhaps if you're dealing with consumer goods rather than services. Um, but I firmly believe it's not great for estate agents and letting agents. And having understood that and having understood why, that directly leads into your problems with lack of differentiation, which leads to pricing problems, which leads to the hamster wheel in terms of you're just constantly trying to get more and more stuff out there because you're trying to appeal to as many people as possible. That's just not the best use of time or budget. You can do a lot less if you can be focused and if you can be insightful and if you can be memorable and remarkable. But that's what a lot of people find difficult, and I can help with that. So, very conscious of time. I will leave you just with the QR code on there because, especially if you're watching this on YouTube and you've got value from what I've been talking about, and you want to see, okay, how can that actually translate to my own particular business? Scan the QR code, do the answer the questions. There's only 9 questions. It'll take you literally 30 seconds. You're not going to have to go digging in filing cabinets to pull out management accounts or anything like that. It's all very easy numbers that you've got in your head. And then within 24 hours, probably more, probably sooner, but it just depends on what I've got going on. I'll send you the 1-page report. Um, and depending on what you think of that, we could have a chat. We could potentially end up working together or not. Up to you. If you've found the video useful, then hit like. If you want to see the next ones when they get posted, hit subscribe. In the description, if you actually want to sign up to be on the next one live, because if you are here live, you can always ask questions, then the link to do that will be in the description down below. But hopefully you found it useful and insightful, and I will leave that there.